Let me in.
So, Rebirth has been a very special kind of project when I hear that word. Like, when I think of Rebirth, I think of the DC Universe and what Jeff Johns did. Like, DC Universe Rebirth Initiative, uh, Green Lantern Rebirth, Flash Rebirth, and to an extent, um, the House of X, Dawn of X. I like to refer to it sometimes as an X Men Rebirth because at a time, X Men were really struggling. So, in the wake of these planned event called the Resurrection Crisis, where Bray Wyatt seeks to revive Eric as part of a directive order that he was given way before his planned death, and Bray Wyatt, the Shield, the Wyatt family, what remains of the Empire's military might that were involved with this, decide to try and revive Eric. However, it leads to some problems for the greater good, and it leads to multiple people dying. It leads to the entire multiverse collapsing in on itself, and well, everything just went really badly at the end of all this. But in the wake of the resurrection crisis, saw its resurrection, the violent resurrection of the multiverse, the violent resurrection of the main amalgamation universe. It was then I came up with the idea after reading the Rebirth trilogy Jeff Johns created and all this other projects he's done. And the idea was to come up with a comprehensive idea of where I want to take this series after the events of the Emperor Eric saga, and that is where my version of the multiverse rebirth initiative comes in, where it will be a trilogy planned, and one of the plans involve the revival of the Emperor Eric. He returns in an empire divided because after his death, a lot of infighting had occurred, and there were some numerous fractions in it, numerous factions forming. You had the criminal syndicates of the new amalgamation universe being affected by all this, and now they're trying to carve up some power, whatever they can, from the empire and the chaos that has come. And this has led to the empire being very poorly effective in handling this because now there was no prime leader to make the big decisions, which leads into his return, and he takes some time off after the events of the resurrection crisis due to his mental health and everything. And he has kept a relationship he's having with an Earthling actually in secret because for various reasons, such as, well, the Empire probably doesn't want to know about that stuff after what happened in the Great Universal War conflict. Humanity still having a harboring a grudge against Eric for slaughtering the entire species, and now there's this tension with him and his current state since he doesn't have a very dark demonic entity since he was in a Jinchuriki at one point, but then lost it after the Great Universal War conflict, and now he's just trying to struggle, find his identity and what to do with it, while the War of the Five Territories continues raging over a very central point in the multiverse galaxy, in the amalgamation galaxy, where the various factions are fighting for this one big point in the Empire's territory, where if they get it, they'll have access to the neutral zone that's trying to be established in the wake of the Great Universal War after the events of Book 3. So now you have all this stuff going on. A human species that is, while righteously angry, are now seeking justice and paying with blood, while a sect of the human race splits off to try and basically handle justice on their own terms, since the legal system wasn't working out so well because he was of royal status and he was the leader of a sovereign nation by 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 ruling standards, so they couldn't really force him to try unless they wanted to do a preemptive assassination attempt, which wouldn't work. And this leads into two more stories. One is basically based off of Jeff Johns' DC Universe Rebirth. It's a massive one shot where I talk about the 6 months that have passed between the Resurrection Crisis ending and the 6 months worth of things that have been altered. I've been cooking up a list of what I want, what I don't want anymore in the story, retcons, changes, and alternate timelines being merged. One of the biggest things I wanted to bring in to the series was, so you remember I have this friend. He was the first guest on my Neo Reality podcast, where me and him, HF Hoofhammer, had talked about the Recidivist and all these other fan fiction stuff, and I had read his story, The Recidivist, a lot until he decided to rewrite it. Then I started seeing the rewrites of what he was doing. They're pretty good so far. One of the biggest things I wanted to do was bring his universe, his Recidivist Ruby universe, into the main Ruby universe world of Remnant. But the problem was that Ruby had his own canon, the Recidivist was his own canon. So I thought, well, I can't just destroy the old canon, the Monty canon, or the Rooster Teeth canon as it's now called, and just get rid of all of it. Like, there was a lot of good ideas after the events of Volume 3 that were good, but then it started veering off its direction for some people, and I can understand that. And I looked at the Recidivist, and I was like, I really love this project. It's very coherent. It's very structured. It very feels like there was a plan involved when coming up with the world and the changes that were made to it, such as the Draenese Empire, the dragons, the Zulags, the Antediluvians. So I thought, okay, how about, and I had gotten his blessing on this, I wanted to merge the canons of the Ruby timeline and the Recidivist timeline, bring in a whole bunch of characters from his Recidivist universe, and merge his continuity with the Ruby universe. So that was ultimately decided in my mind. Where I'm right now trying to get lore information more so to try and see what I want to put in, see what I don't want to put in, what changes should be made, what changes shouldn't be made to tie it all together. One of the other biggest canon changes is altering some of the new Disney canon. Mainly Legends is the main canon for my story, but there were some stuff from the Disney world of stuff I wanted, like the Ghost Crew, and there would be timeline discrepancies and confusion, so I thought we could recanonize some of the Disney characters into the Legends system, where Ezra, the Ghost Crew, have a now established history with the Legends timeline, and after the Empire formed and everything. Thrawn has his own timeline. There's a lot of inner conflicts going on, and the Resurrection Crisis also brought back some other characters and characters that weren't really around, such as I never saw Baruto. I never saw Boruto or whatever. I wasn't interested in the sequel series to Naruto. I thought it should have ended in Naruto and probably should have ended a little bit sooner than really it went. But what can you do? So I wanted to do my own spin on that on that timeline, and just get rid of all the stuff that happened in Boruto, and do my own interpretation of the characters there. Some of the alterations, like as Naruto's son, his daughter, and another character being integrated into the new Naruto timeline. But now, with a lot of things that have been changed, since there was a lot of plans I had in mind before the show, even before the first series even concluded in its manga or anime form, that was decided that, I don't count the other thing as my canon. I'm not interested in that. So there might not be the established pairings that were made. There might be some events that were altered. I probably won't be bringing in that needlessly overly complex goddess character involved. She might get mentioned at best, but yeah, I'll probably just roll that out later down the road. Another idea that I was talking about to myself was I wanted to bring something else back to it, like I've been rewatching the Life is Strange stuff, and I wanted to bring the Life is Strange and the Walking Dead characters like Clementine after the events of season 4 of the final season, and that would lead into after the resurrection crisis was going on. Clementine and her group were somehow thrown out of the universal sphere due to the paradox corrections and the chaos that was going on, and now they have an established history in the main amalgamation universe. The biggest changes besides the Ruby canon was going to also be the DC universe. Like plants were like the anti-life equation is dormant. The Infinity Stones in the Marvel side of stuff would become active, slowly but surely get active again. The reveal that there was in fact a version of Spider-Geddon. Miles Morales gains knowledge of his Ultimate Universe counterpart, where he was born from, basically. Gwen Stacy is now from Ghost Spider is now a official part of this new timeline of alterations. But recently there was another big change I wanted to start doing, and it was something that inspired me from the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I will talk about that in a video later down the road. But the idea I got was, it's funny that other than Final Fantasy X-2, which makes no sense, Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, I was like, it's funny that all these ideas and all these different types of characters and timelines and worlds exist, but what if they're all the same world and there's a very powerful force that's rebooting the universe every time? So my idea I came up with recently was to integrate. So the Kingdom Hearts characters you see, the Final Fantasy of Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, Squall, Leonhard as he's Squall, Titus, Waka, all those characters, and Yuna, all those characters that are in Kingdom Hearts. I wanted to use the Rebirth saga to establish that, they're not really Kingdom Heart characters. They're really the Final Fantasy characters that you remember them as, saying that there was an unidentified force that kept changing the universe around, trying to test things out, and that now, due to the events of the Resurrection Crisis, their memories are slowly but surely returning, and the past that they've experienced all happened, and now they're out on a new mission now as the memories start to become more clear. That will lead into another storyline later down the road where the missing Final Fantasy worlds are going to be discovered on this journey, and they have to stop the threat that went ahead and altered all of their worlds, that rebooted the universe over and over and over for Final Fantasy 1 all the way to its current iteration. And also, I was going to bring up my own theories regarding Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'll talk about that when I get to my Final Fantasy video. So, this is still a work in progress on this, but there is recently a new idea that came up. Originally, it was supposed to be a duology, the Multiverse Rebirth one-shot and the Multiverse Emperor Eric Rebirth was really, that was going to be it. But then I got this idea from, surprisingly, Scott Lobdell and DC Comics' Flash Forward story after Wally West's whole Heroes in Crisis debacle. He goes on this quest of redemption at the urging of the Watcher, basically, of the DC universe. And this leads into him becoming, this new Dr. Manhattan after taking the Mobius chair. And he travels through cross time and space and discovers that there are timeline anomalies and whatnot. So one of the ideas that's going to happen now in book one of the Rebirth trilogy, the Emperor Eric Rebirth, was that his love interest goes ahead and unlocks a very unique element of the human species that has not yet been discovered. And the idea was to do this idea where they would go ahead and find out that there's a new subspecies evolutionary chain that's off the record known as Homo Ascensiono, where humanity can ascend to this more powerful form of themselves, breaking the evolutionary chain and become basically what Eric did, where Eric managed to adapt and learn these abilities. Now there's a chance that the humans could learn these stuff, that like the Force, all this, the Keyblades, everything, if they're able to unlock that real potential in them. But whereas Eric had help from a very powerful group of people that I will get into in another edition of Writing Multiverse, she does not have that fortune. And now she's trying to understand her power. She's trying to get knowing what the heck is going on. And this leads into discovering that there is going to be yet more crises in the future, and she cannot see them clearly because her powers are running rampant, and as she travels through time and space. And that will lead into her eventually meeting those powerful people that have this gift to control to teach the abilities of this Homo Ascensiono sub evolution chain system. And and Emperor Eric was going to focus more on the political, military side of everything that's changed in the wake of the Resurrection Crisis and what the consequences have been. The Multiverse Rebirth one shot is to establish what was changed, what wasn't. The biggest changes that were made in the Multiverse Rebirth one shot was to reveal that Dr. Manhattan has been revived in these events because there is a plan to kill him off in a Multiverse Stories imprint that I'm doing in the Flash Manhattan War. And then there's going to be where the multiverse is now altered. When Eric merged the universes together into one colossal amalgamation universe, it's revealed that this was part of recreating a new type of multiverse, a new type of time and space, where it's going to reveal that there's now a metaverse existing. Humanity was close to achieving the metaverse status of their original OG universe, but then it was significantly changed due to humanity's lust for greed and conflict and defiance. But after the events of the Great Earth War, that progress was halted. Now, the Amalgamation Universe has been revived as a metaverse. I borrowed the idea from DC Comics' Doomsday Clock, where Dr. Manhattan learns about something called the metaverse, where it influences all the other multiverse worlds, all the other Earths. So that was my idea. The metaverse is now a thing. The metaverse influences all the other multiverses. So now the stakes have been raised higher because anyone who would threaten the metaverse can now influence the other multiverse worlds, which means that leads to much bigger problems when Dr. Manhattan gets more curious when he comes back, and other powerful forces. So, and now one of the other things that's going to be revealed in the Multiverse Rebirth one-shot is time travel is kind of still now a thing again. Whereas you can't really travel back in time to change events, but you can look forward to see what's going to happen in the future, but very few can really access this new temporal gateway. The only people that have been able to gather this power is Dr. Manhattan, really, and that leads into the Manhattan story, part of the Crisis Saga, as the final book of the Crisis Saga. But now it's going to be revealed that Dr. Manhattan can see through time now again. He can see the past, the present, the future, and now he doesn't know what to do with this information, but now he's growing curious of what to do, and a curious Manhattan is a very dangerous one. So there's going to be tons and tons of big events coming in this Rebirth Initiative trilogy, and I'm looking forward to writing this stuff. I'm still listing all the changes I want to do with it, and book 3 is to focus on the cosmic side of stuff, the timelines, the cosmic scales being changed, and now you got political and military, you got alterations to the times, and the cosmic side of stuff of the metaverse now. It's still going to be called Multiverse because I've just been used to that name, But metaverse is somewhat going to be mentioned a lot in this renew alteration after the Rebirth initiative, and like tons and tons of big retcons and changes. Like, let's see, I kept a list of what I wanted to change in the Multiverse series. Like, one of the things is that there's a reveal to be a barrier that prevents the Black Lantern battery, the Flood, and various other infectious forms are held at bay for a while, but now it's coming out. It's coming to spread. It's coming to take over everything. Life is Strange is going to have a change where Chloe Price is revived, but is revealed to be in a coma now. And the anti-life equation is dormant. Apocalypse and New Genesis, which were always established outside of the multiverse in DC, now are part of the new metaverse. Dragon Ball would also get major changes, such as Masako X's What If Raditz, What If Nappa turned good stuff would be added. The Super Dragon Ball's powers are now more enhanced than ever. Yeah, I kept keeping that part vague of what exactly the enhancements are. But now so many changes are coming for this in the wake of the Resurrection Crisis that it's probably going to be the biggest project I ever do for a while until I get to the Crisis series. And the Emperor X Saga is probably going to be the best fun I'll ever have with this stuff, but I am really looking forward to the Rebirth trilogy and what's going to come next. This is interlude is the Rebirth era that's going to establish what's to happen now, where are these people at, what's going to happen in the future, and serve as a bridge into the Crisis Saga. So now we get Thanos' reveal about he becoming a Black Lantern, the herald basically of death, of Necron and everything. So now you get all this stuff going on, and no one knows what to do with it, but I am looking forward to writing all this and posting it when the day ever comes. So this was writing Multiverse, the Multiverse Rebirth initiative. This was New Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for